If you have big goals for your business and money, but find that you're not making the progress that you want to make toward actually achieving those goals, there is one weekly practice that I think is going to change your life and change your business if you take the time to implement it. And that weekly practice is taking the time every week to have a CEO date with yourself where you step out of the weeds, you step out of the day-to-day, and you work on your business. You put your CEO hat on and think about where you want to go and the exact next steps you need to take in the next week in order to take steps forward. So one of the really big things that I like to focus on in the High Profit Society, and that my team and I are focusing even more heavily on with our Done For You clients at Young & Co, is a 90-day profit plan. So you've probably heard me talk about every quarter I do a quarterly CEO planning day, which is where I map out my goals for the quarter and a roadmap to how I'm going to continue to take steps forward toward building the vision for my business and my money and my life that I want to have. How we carry that out is we break things down on a weekly basis into the action steps that you need to take in order to actually be working towards your goals. And so on a weekly basis, it's not about achieving everything that you set out in your 90-day profit plan all in a week or two, but we're asking ourselves, how can we move even just 1% forward toward our goals every single week? And so this is what we map out in your weekly CEO dates. So I'm not going to go through in super granular detail what I like to do in my CEO planning dates because I already have a video that I've done on that exact process. So you can go and watch that video for a more thorough breakdown. But at a very high level, it's actually a similar process that we do for our quarterly planning days. It just takes a lot less time. So I'm looking back and assessing what went well and what didn't. I'm looking at my CEO scorecard so I can see my metrics for what we did in the last week and see if we're on track or off track to the goals that we want to hit. I'm updating my cash forecast so I have a sense of, am I going to have enough money for my business for the next 30 to 60 days, or do I need to do something now in order to prevent cash flow issues in the next couple months? And then I'm mapping out my priorities and I'm time blocking what I'm doing for the week into my schedule so that I have a very clear action plan for what I'm going to do through the week and making sure that all of those ultimately lead me back into the goals that I set for the quarter. What I really want to talk about today, though, is why people don't take the time to do this. So this is actually something that has come up recently with several clients, and I'm going to talk you through what I talked to them about so that they would actually take the time to have their CEO dates. So the questions that were coming up were things like, I either don't feel like I have time to spend on CEO dates. I'm just so busy. I don't know when I'm going to do it. I don't know what I'm going to even do when I have the time. Or the other questions that come up will be, I set aside the time to do it, but when it comes time to actually do it, I find something else to do. So I find in general, there are two primary roadblocks that people have that will prevent you from having a CEO date. Roadblock number one is time. It's really easy to get caught up in the habit of just being really busy with client work all the time and seeing taking time to work on the business as either unproductive, or it might feel like it's taking time off from your business. You might have some guilt, especially if you see your team working on client work that you've assigned them. You might have some guilt around taking time to not help them do that client work, to not be super involved with your team and not be super client facing potentially in this time, and to take the time to work on the business, especially on a regular weekly basis. So I'm not going to tell you that those concerns are valid, but I think that number one, figuring out how you can restructure your weeks to have some meeting-free days, at least one, if not two. I personally aim for 3 meeting-free days most weeks, and taking even just a 2-hour block of time to set aside. I like to do it either Monday morning or Friday afternoon for the week ahead. Actually, I like to do some of my CEO dates on Sundays just because it's a nice quiet time and I have some creative energy and it feels aligned for me, but I know that not everybody wants to be doing business stuff on the weekend. So finding a couple hours that you feel like you can sit down and devote to doing CEO time is going to be really important. This is just a really great example of this idea of urgent versus important work. And so our brains are wired to view short-term issues as things we need to work on as being the things that we need to put our focus on because they're right in front of our faces, versus taking a long-term view and spending time on doing the things that you know are good for your business, you know that's going to help you move forward. They just feel like you can kick the can down the road because there's other things that you should be doing with your time. But I'm going to tell you that taking the time to do a CEO date, taking the time to update your scorecard, to assess what's working on a regular basis, to revisit your quarterly goals that you set and ask yourself, what is one thing that I can do this week in order to move me forward? This is how you implement change. I actually recently sat down with my team and we did a breakdown of all of the monthly clients that we have. And we asked ourselves, who's seeing the best results? Who are we seeing have revenue growth, profitability growth? Who has the best cash flow? Who are we seeing us having a big impact on? And from the clients that are having the best results, we asked ourselves, what makes them different? And the differentiator that we see is that they actually take the time to go and implement what we advise them to do. As a CFO, as an advisor for business owners, I'm not necessarily going to implement for you, right? Like my job and my team's job is, yes, we implement if we do your monthly accounting and your taxes, like we do all that stuff for you. But ultimately, like what we're trying to do is help you answer the question of what's working best. How can you improve your business? What do you need to do to move forward in order to improve profitability and help you grow your business and build wealth? But we can't implement those big picture changes if we say this offer's underpriced and so your profit margin's low, or we say, hey, you have too many team members for the capacity that you have, you're gonna need to cut some staff. Like we can't actually go cut the staff. We can't raise the prices. We can't change your website for you. But I saw that the people who have the best results are the people who take the time every week to work on those big picture things. And so in the moment, it can feel really unimportant, but those are the actions that really add up over the long run. And so I'm telling you to mark 2 hours on your calendar every week for CEO dates. And I'm saying that because I think that when you first start, and it can take some time to figure out like what your process is, what things are you looking at, where are you looking at, like where are you pulling data, how do you break down your goals, how do you do time blocking? Like these are all skills that you have to learn and perfect over time. And I will say for me, it probably takes me now that I've been doing CEO dates on a weekly basis, it probably takes me 30 minutes, if even that. So I say the longer you do it, the faster you get. So it doesn't even have to be a huge time investment, but I'm telling you the return on that investment is huge. And this is why I'm telling you that if you want to make progress towards your goals, this is a really important weekly practice to implement. The second roadblock that I think people have to taking the time to working on their business is a fear of what they're going to find. And so when I'm telling you to look at your metrics, to look at your financials, to look back at your goals and ask yourself, what have we accomplished? What's next? These can be big, scary things because you can be afraid of seeing, what are my metrics going to say? What if my metrics tell me that I'm failing? And I'm saying this as somebody who has had that exact same thing happen. I actually remember this being something that came up for me when I was looking at podcast numbers as I'm recording a podcast, because I was asking myself, you know, how can I look at my podcast stats to see what's working the best and which episodes and how are, you know, downloads growing over time or whatever. And I got to tell you, I pulled it off. Actually, it was digging into the numbers about episode retention and seeing what percentage of people stay and listen to the whole episode or watch the whole episode on YouTube. And that, for whatever reason, has been a metric that I have not ever wanted to look at because I was afraid of what it was going to mean about me as a person, as a business owner, if I saw that nobody stayed and listened to the whole episode, right? It would mean like I go into this spiral that I have to be aware of and work to reframe. But I would go into this spiral of thinking, oh, if no one stays and listens, that means my episodes are crap. That means nobody cares what I have to say, which means I'm going to fail, which means, you know what I'm saying? Like I spiral. So if you do the same thing, just know you are not alone. I've had multiple clients have the same thing. And again, I think that it is a skill that you have to perfect of managing your mindset and acknowledging when these things that are going through your head are actually hurting you. And when you allow the fear of what you might see to hold you back from taking the steps forward, from doing the work on your business, it's actually going to help you to achieve your goals. And so I won't go into my whole mindset framework, but just acknowledging if that's happening to you, working to stop it in its tracks, I think will help you to work on having regular CEO dates. And the other thing I would say too is just start small. Maybe you don't have to go through and do a full CEO date, but if just taking the time away where you're not available to your clients or your team, or you're not sitting at your desk or whatever it needs to be, just building the habit of stepping back on a weekly basis, I think is something that you can build on over time. So I like to have tangible takeaways from every episode that I have on this podcast. So your tangible takeaways from this one, in order to have more CEO dates on a more consistent basis, number one is going to be find the time. So I'm a really big proponent of routines, and I like to design my weeks in such a way that I have a pretty consistent time where I can build a habit or a routine around taking CEO time. So asking yourself, when are you going to be able to step away from your business? Is there a time where you feel like you're going to be able to take the quiet time, or you could maybe even go somewhere else just to make it more enjoyable and make it an experience that you really look forward to? So looking at your calendar, I like to time CEO dates towards either the very end of the week or the very, very start of the week. So if you're going to do it at the beginning of the week, doing it before you jump into anything else, because otherwise you're going to get sidetracked and do other stuff. And then before you know it, you've missed your CEO date. So looking at your calendar, finding a time where you feel like you can be semi-consistent at having your CEO date on a weekly basis, and then marking it on your calendar. So literally make an appointment like you're making a doctor's appointment, and then holding yourself to that. The next thing I would do is you can either go to the other video that I did where I walked you through my process, or you can just kind of make up your own, like what do you think would be helpful for you to do in a CEO date, and make yourself a list so that you don't just show up and you're sitting there twiddling your thumb saying, okay, now what? Make yourself a list, and if you don't finish the whole list, that is totally fine. You will refine a process that works for you for your CEO time over time, the more you do it. And then the last piece is just going to be to follow through. So it's making a commitment to yourself, having the trust with yourself, having the self-integrity to follow through on what you committed to doing. I think anchoring back into your big picture goals and vision, and remembering that you need to be working on those and taking steps forward, and just having the self-accountability, I think, to do it. One of my clients in the High Profit Society a couple months ago, I think, said, I mark the time on my calendar to do it, but when the time comes, I just do other things that feel like more important at the time. So I never actually end up having CEO dates. And what I said to her is to reframe. Number one, make it a shorter time commitment if that helps you to show up and feel like it's less of a lift to take the time. But during that time, either do the thing that you said you're going to do, or journal about why you're not doing it, because that might actually help you uncover something that is holding you back in terms of mindset. So basically do the thing, or journal on why you're not doing the thing, or stare at the wall. Basically, those are your three options. And I think if you become almost like a personal trainer for yourself, like if I was there telling you, like if you came to me with this question, like what would I tell you to do? Like imagine me telling you in your head, show up and do the thing because you said you're going to, and because you're going to keep that commitment to yourself. Journal about why you're not doing the thing so that you can identify the underlying mindset issues, or stare at the wall. But have the space where you are not doing client work, where you're not available to your team, and build the habit over time. Before we go, if you need help with structuring the scorecard component of your weekly CEO date, you can go to trustyoungco.com/scorecard, where I have a free Google Sheets template for your CEO scorecard. It is not fancy at all, nor does it need to be fancy, but it is literally the exact same template that I have used for years to track my own KPIs in my business. All right, y'all, so go forth. Have your CEO dates so that you can actually make progress on a weekly basis towards your goals. And let me know in the comments if you end up doing this, what you find, or if it has any sort of positive impact on your business. Let me know how it goes, and I'll see you back next week.